Do you work in the animal health industry or veterinary profession? Have you ever wondered how people began their careers and how they got to where they are today? Hi everyone, I'm Stacy Purcell, the founder and CEO of The Vet Recruiter, the leading executive search and recruiting firm for the animal health industry and veterinary profession. I was the first recruiter to specialize in the animal health industry and veterinary profession in the United States and built the first search firm to serve this unique niche. For the past 25 plus years, I have built relationships with the industry's top leaders and trailblazers. The People of Animal Health podcast highlights the incredible individuals I have connected with throughout my career. You will be able to learn more about their lives, careers, and contributions. With our wide range of expert guests, you'll be sure to learn something new in every episode. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the People of Animal Health podcast. Today's guest on the People of Animal Health podcast is Dr. Andy Roark, a practicing veterinarian, international speaker, author, and media personality who has dedicated his career to strengthening the veterinary profession. He is the founder of both drandyroark.com and the Uncharted Veterinary Conference, platforms that connect and empower veterinary professionals worldwide. Dr. Roark's popular videos, articles, and podcasts reach millions monthly, offering both insights and inspiration. He's a multi-award-winning educator, columnist, and advocate for veterinary teams. Above all, he's a passionate leader who believes in the power of community connection and kindness in veterinary medicine. Welcome, Dr. Roark, to the People of Animal Health podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I will tell you, I did not write that introduction. You came up with that, and it is absolutely wonderful. Like the being a connector of the profession, and just anyway, I just what a lovely welcome that is. Thank you for having me.
Well, Annie, I'm so glad to have you here. We have known each other for a long time, and I would love to start off at the beginning. What was your life like growing up, and where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a small town in North Carolina. My dad was a small town general surgeon, and yeah, it was sort of one of the family doctors, if you will, of the area. He had his own little surgery center. He worked at there's two hospitals there, and so he worked at the hospitals, but he also had his own little place, and he had a couple of nurses that helped him at his like surgery center, and I think that sort of established for me one the impact that he had on the community and sort of what it means to kind of be to be sort of a healer and a and just a doctor, but also the way that he worked with his support staff and the way he treated them and just sort of he created sort of this place where he did good work. It was funny, I was talking to somebody recently about kind of what kind of a doctor he was or kind of what I learned from him, and I'll never forget, he did a lot of surgery for the Amish community that was outside of our town, and they didn't really have any money and they didn't have any insurance or anything, but it was funny, they would need surgery in their community, and he would do it, and then they would do something like he's an avid gardener, and so we have these beautiful like wooden gazebos or like gliders and swings, and the Amish community built them, and that was kind of how they paid for services, and my dad would just kind of barter with them, and so they would do these things, and I think I learned a lot about what it means to be a doctor, and kind of the purpose of the work and the impact on the community and things like that from him. And I grew up in that town with my mom and my brother, and he's 4 years younger than me, but he was my best friend most of my life, and he is now as well. We talk on the phone almost every day, and so it was a really good childhood. I love North Carolina. I live in South Carolina now. It's very much my home.
Well, you've worn many hats: veterinarian, speaker, author, media personality, and founder. How do you balance it all, and what continues to drive your passion for this profession?
Um, I yeah, I've always done a lot of things. It fits my personality, I think, quite naturally. I tend to be kind of a distractible sort of ADD type person, and I get bored pretty easily. And so I've done these things, but it's never been, when I'm honest, I'll say it's never been really intentional of I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that and then I'm going to do this other thing. And I have never decided I'm going to stop doing X and start doing Y. I've always just decided that Y was very interesting and I wanted to do more of it. And I would just sort of go in that direction. So everything has kind of grown on itself. And I'm one who I find things I'm excited about and I jump into them and I learn a lot. And it's funny, once you take an opportunity and you kind of work on it, other opportunities that you never could have seen or would not have been, that wouldn't have been available to you, they kind of open up. And so I think I always tell people, I think doing sort of strategic planning is really, really valuable, and strategic plans themselves are usually pretty worthless. The act of thinking about what you want or where you're going, what the objectives are, I think that's really, really important. But it almost never really worked out for me in the truth of life. The world changes, context changes. You know, um, I was I was thinking recently, I was at a conference and I was asking myself, what am I doing here? Do I have enough things scheduled for me? Am I doing enough to justify being here? And then I kind of realized, I have made a number of things happen in my career for myself, which is good. But at least that many things have just fallen into my lap where I was in the right place, and I had worked on developing a reputation for sort of working hard and doing good work. And then other people came to me with things I had never thought of and said, "Would you consider giving this thing a try?" And I thought, sure, I'll give it a try. We'll figure it out. And that's kind of been the story of my career again and again. As far
You
as
know,
sort of,
you've been open to opportunities.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I like to try new things. I think I have a history of saying yes and then figuring out how to do it, and I think a lot of people, I think if I had to know exactly what I was doing before I said yes to an opportunity, I don't think I wouldn't have had many opportunities in my career. Most of my things have been saying yes and then and then getting to work to learn what I need and talk to the people who could help me and figuring those things out. As far as sort of keeping it in balance, that's always been a work in progress. It's I pay attention. I think I've done a good job of sort of paying attention to what my life is like. And I think my priorities tend to stay in order. My family is the most important thing to me, my wife and my children. And I want to be a good father and husband, and I want to be a good friend. And I think I've done a good job of sort of keeping those things in line. And so when I feel work creeping up and I start feeling like I'm not having opportunities to be there for my kids, or if I start missing things with my family, my wife and I have a good marriage and good open dialogue about, how are you doing? How am I doing? You know, um, are there ways that I can support you? Are there ways that you can support me? And my wife is good about communicating and saying, hey, it feels like you've got a lot going on, and you're traveling a lot and things. I just want to check in. And I understand what she means with that. And then she is checking on me. And also she's sort of indicating she's starting to feel friction around me being gone too much or being too head down in work. And I try to make adjustments because that's my commitment to her. And it's funny, I've found a lot. I think when I was young, I would decide I was working too much, something like that. And I would be frustrated that I couldn't immediately stop working, because you can't. But I came to understand that I could make adjustments, and it would take about 3 months for them to take effect. But, if you're doing a lot of work, if you're, sort of traveling or doing things that you don't really want to do, you might not be able to affect those things today. But almost no one's gonna give you a hard time if you go onto your schedule and you go out 3 months and then you start making some changes or start putting some blocks in there and saying, "I'm gonna be unavailable at this time," or, "I need to make a change starting at the beginning of the year. I'm not gonna be able to do these things." If you reach out in the future, people don't tend to mind so much. It's hard to change things right in the moment, but once I kind of figured out that I really do have great control as long as I can hold on for a couple of months, that was the key for me. And so I tend to gear down, and then I kind of get a little bit bored and I want to do a little bit more and I pick up more. And at some point I probably end up overcommitting, and I recognize the signs of being overcommitted, and I start saying no, and I start trying to, make some space. And after a couple of months, things start to slow back down and I catch my breath, and it's kind of cyclical. I sort of associate it with like, it's not work-life balance so much as it's like the tides of the ocean, where there's definitely high tides and sometimes there's low tides, and they're not always the same length of time. But that helps me feel okay when I'm in high tide, and it also helps me feel okay when I'm in low tide. It's like, oh, the high tide will come again, I have no doubt.
I like what you said because we hear a lot about work-life balance. I like tides of the ocean because I like to think of it as work-life integration.
Well, I think that's true too. Some of it's about workload. So, like, when you graduate from vet school and it's your first year as a doctor, I don't I don't know how you sort of, balance that. You're probably going to work a lot. And honestly, you want to because you've got these skills, but they're soft. Like they're kind of nebulous. You haven't really used them. Um, and there's so many people who come out and they come out of vet school and vet school is exhausting. And then they're working really hard in their first year of practice and they're like, I'm failing. I thought that I would get out and life would get easier. I would say, no, this is just high tide. It's going to be a year or two. You're going to be much more confident in a fairly short amount of time, and you're going to be able to kind of get things organized and really kind of start to have the schedule you want. But that beginning part, I don't know how you avoid, I don't know how you avoid just leaning in and putting in a lot of time and effort at that time. The same thing like when you have children, and you and I have talked about our kids before. When you have young kids at home, I don't know where the off switch is. It's just that's going to be a wild time in your life. And the good thing is it's going to pass. It's going to be you're
There
going.
is no off switch when you have
Eh,
kids.
yeah, but it gets easier. It gets easier, and there's times where your kids need you a lot, and there's times when they're much more self-sufficient and they don't need you or need your immediate attention all the time. And but it's a fluctuation, and it's just you're not doing it wrong when you end up in periods where you're really working hard. I don't think. I think you need to pay attention to where you are and make sure that you're working hard when you need to work hard and then leaning back when you need to lean back. And yeah, but it won't be. There'll be times of your life where you're just gonna work hard for a year or two, and there'll be times when you have a lot more control about what you're doing. The tricky part is actually not feeling guilty. I've found when I have a low tide period or when I'm not working as hard as I used to. That was the hardest part for me to learn.
I'm about to enter a new phase of my life. I'm sending my youngest child off to college on Monday. It's bittersweet. I'm excited for him. I'm don't know how I'm going to feel about being an empty nester because it'll be the first
Um,
time in 25 years I won't have any kids at home.
I can't wait to see how you feel about. I think about that a lot. My oldest is a senior in high school, and my youngest just went to high school. And Stacey, I'm really tight with them. When when COVID hit, they had virtual school for 2 years. When I wasn't at the clinic, I worked from home, and they worked with me, and we got to be very tight. So we are very close, and I can't imagine what it's going to be like, especially just to have one, but then to be an empty nester. I do sometimes when I think about the future, I wonder what's going to happen in my career, what I'm going to want to do. I'm confident that when the time comes, I'm not going to sit around and mope. I'm going to look at the free time on my hands and figure out something to do with it. And I don't know what that is, but I am excited to kind of see that part, but also I am nervous about my kids not being around. So anyway, I can't wait to see what your experience is like.
Well, my husband and I have been taking dance lessons this summer. Our first dance class was we learned the polka, the Jenny Lynn polka dance. In true story, my husband and I have been married 29 years. It'll be 30 years next June, and we had never danced before.
Wow.
Together. I grew up dancing, ballet, tap, jazz, etc. But he would always say, "I'm not a dancer." And so this summer, the Tulsa Historical Society put on their social media that they were doing these ballroom dances, and they you could sign up. So we signed up and took some lessons over the summer, and it was so much fun.
That's fantastic. I was telling somebody today, I was talking to a young doctor and I said, "Well, what are your hobbies?" And, she was her early career and she had some hobbies. Mostly she said she spent her time cleaning her house. And I said, I really think it's so important to have hobbies. I think it's so important to have things that you look forward to. Even if it's just you look forward to during the week. I think that that's sort of an important part of being a balanced person and being happy. I just too many of us don't really have anything we're looking forward to or that we're excited, to get to at the end of the day.
Oh, I agree. That's so important. Well, Andy, I'm curious, what inspired you to start the Uncharted Veterinary Conference, and how has it evolved since its launch in 2016?
Oh wow. Um, so it started for there's two major reasons. Number one, by 2016, I had been speaking for, 8 or 10 years at that point, and sort of and going to conferences and things all over the country and all over the world. And I had some strong beliefs about what makes a really great conference. And I thought, I think these are the attributes that really matter. That's what I think. And I wanted to see if that was true. And so I had my own beliefs about what makes a really great event, and I wanted to do that. And I really love being at these events and getting to know the people and all of those sorts of things. And so I I thought I had some good ideas, and I really want to try them. The other thing is, so I always lecture on management and leadership and things like that. And the problem with most conferences and sort of the way they're set up is they're all one and done events, meaning, everybody comes together and there's a lecture on, say, management of, hospitals, and everyone shows up and you lecture to them, and then they all get excited and then they go home. And there's two pieces of that I don't really like. The first one is people come and you, as the presenter, you kind of have to start at the 101 level, because you don't know what these people know coming in, and they'll be sort of all over the board. And there'll be some people who are very business savvy, and there'll be other people who just got promoted into the role, and they need to learn the basics, and they're desperate for that. And so it's very hard to cover content that's not the entry level content. And I just been doing it long enough, and like I said, I get bored. And my idea with Uncharted was that we would meld together an in-person conference with sort of a virtual experience, so that we could do some teaching, and then virtually we could follow up and build on that teaching. And that's really kind of what I wanted and what I was trying to do. My wife is also a biology professor, and she really studies pedagogy, which is the science around learning. And I really believe that I think lecture is fun, but I really don't think it's the best way for adults to learn. I really think that active learning, problem solving, case studies, discussion groups, roundtable discussions, things like that. I think that that stuff is so much more powerful in helping people really understand and also retain what they're being taught. And so I wanted to make that happen. And so I had visions about kind of what that learning part would look like, and the ability to make it so that people who were really business nerds like myself, they didn't feel like they were going to a conference and getting the 101 level stuff, but they were engaging in a way that let them talk to other people who were really invested in it, or had a lot of knowledge. And we might have sort of a base level discussion, but then if I can pair these people and put them together at groups of people who are in similar positions or similar stages of their sort of education development, then they can work together and really get a lot out of the conversations and things. And so that was sort of the two drives there that came together for me to make me want to do that. And when we started out, I mean, it has worked great. The pandemic was a huge change for us, because Uncharted was growing really well, and we were doing events and more live events. And after the pandemic, all of the live events were shut down, and then for about a year and a half, there really wasn't a lot. There really wasn't a lot going on, and the hotels had laid off a lot of their staff, and suddenly people decided it was okay to have live events again. And so then everybody's trying to have them, right? All of the people who were going to get married and waited until after the pandemic, they're all trying to get wedding venues, and all of the business meetings, so all of the industries are suddenly trying to get venues to have these meetings, and the venues don't have any staff. And so the prices go shooting up because they're trying to give bonuses and attract more people, and the prices of having live events just absolutely soared. And they never came back down once once the venues figured out that people would pay these prices. And again, I think that's across industries. I was talking to someone who is in construction, and he said that happened with steel during the pandemic. The cost of steel went shooting up. And then once those steel manufacturers realized that people would pay those prices, there was no incentive for them to lower them, and prices just stayed up. And so the cost of live events has really soared. And that has led us to really change the model and how we do live events, and sort of piggybacking off of other events and things like that. And so we still continue to work on that and try to figure out interesting ways to have the events. The opportunity to work online has opened up entirely different, pathways that I never imagined. So honestly, it's funny. Most of our work at the Uncharted conference right now comes from working with corporate practice groups, or with group practices. And what they found is, let's say that you have 7 practices, and so you have 7 medical directors and 7 practice managers. Well, getting them to travel is very challenging, but I can drop in. We'll pick a time, and then I will take all 7 of your practice managers and all 7 of your medical directors, and they will meet with me and my team, and I will give them case studies, and I will challenge them, and I'll have them work on problems, and they'll get to know each other, and they'll get to know me, and we can do education that's customized to their practices, their problems, and we can make it happen where they can be at work and they can pop on, and we'll do a 2-hour block, and then we are done on time, and they are back into the clinic with minimal downtime. And that has just taken off. And now, I work with groups. Honestly, I work with groups as far away as Asia. We've got a group in Hong Kong and Singapore and Thailand that we work with. And so that virtual aspect has really just exploded. So it's always evolving, but it's been a wonderful journey.
Hey everyone, we are interrupting the episode briefly to talk to you about today's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by The Vet Recruiter. The Vet Recruiter is the go-to executive search and recruitment firm in the animal health industry and veterinary profession, dedicated to connecting exceptional employers with high caliber candidates. With a deep understanding of the animal health industry and veterinary profession and a vast pool of talented candidates, we make the hiring process seamless and efficient for the animal health and veterinary employers who have critical hiring needs. If you are an employer in search of top talent, or you work in the animal health industry, or are a veterinarian ready to take the next step in your career, look no further than the Vet Recruiter. The Vet Recruiter has placed many of the industry's top leaders, from CEOs to COOs to chief veterinary officers to VPs of marketing and sales and heads of R&D and chief scientific officers. We have built sales forces for many leading animal health companies and have placed more veterinarians in clinical practice than any other search firm in the U.S. Ready to take the next step? Visit thevetrecruiter.com today. That's thevetrecruiter.com. And now let's get back into the episode. DrAndyRoark.com has become a hub for the veterinary community. What was your original vision for it, and did you expect it to grow into what it is today?
So the original vision for it was quite different. And you have to remember kind of where we were in history. And so the DrAndyRoark.com website got started in about 2010, 2011. And I started to write for it a little bit. Is over the years I started to write for it more and more. At first it was just sort of a little pamphlet that let people know that I was doing speaking, and if you're thinking about hiring me, here's some information about me. But then I started to write some more, and that was kind of driven by social media. And it grew really rapidly. And I had this idea. Once I got social media to start to really grow, I had a much bigger presence than almost anybody else in the vet industry as far as talking to other vet professionals. And so I saw all these other people who were veterinarians and veterinary technicians who were so smart, and they had these interesting things to say, but they had not invested all the time into building a platform, that other people saw. But what they had to say was so valuable, Stacey. And so the original idea for DrAndyRoark.com was, I will give these people a platform, and we'll build something that is a platform for ideas and information and encouragement and positivity in the veterinary world. And it would be sort of this open type of platform. And I hired an editor who would just edit, like people would submit, and we would take open submissions if people wanted, but we had regular sort of writers, and they would submit, and the editor would clean their stuff up. And that was kind of the exchange, was that they would provide the content, and I would have somebody who's really great look at it, clean it up, you make sure that it looked really, really good and everything. And then we would push it, out through our social media channels with them as the recognized author and everything. And it worked quite well. And boy, that really started growing. And I really love that. I thought I like to read. I like ideas. I like the fact that people would write on our website, and it would get a lot of visibility, and they would write some more. And then someone would reach out to them and say, I've been reading what you've written. Would you like to come and speak at our conference? And the person they were so thrilled. And we got to support that person and give them this platform that they never would have had at the beginning. And then they could go on. And there were so many people who are out now, lecturing all over the world. Some of the biggest voices in vet medicine now got their start writing over on DrAndyRoark.com. And like every time I see them, and the room is huge and it's full of people taking notes, I'll see them after it's over, and they will say, remember when you asked me if I would write something for your website? And said, yeah, I do. I remember that. I knew you had great things to say. Like I saw your talent. And it makes me proud to, they did this with their hard work and everything, but I'm so grateful that I could play a role in others finding their wisdom or finding their, their knowledge and just, I don't know, being able to learn from them. And so I was all about that. And I really loved it. And then the world for me and drandyrwork.com radically changed in 2016. And so in 2016, we had the presidential election, and that was when Trump won the election the first time. And that was when